Today's interview is with Byron Lazine. Byron's a real estate agent out of Connecticut, New York. But he has a really interesting story. He talks about how he started investing when he was 19 years old, and by the time he was in his mid-20s, he'd lost all of it. So he talks about the lessons that he learned like that at that time and the mistakes that he made. But then he rose like a phoenix from the ashes, right? He kind of then worked a job that he hated, which pushed him to wanting to go into real estate and be a real estate agent. And now he has his own team and has built a little empire for himself, and has just been very, very, very successful. Will continue to be so. So really interesting story about everything that's gone on with him. Stick around for all of that. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review. It really does help me build this platform, and I appreciate all of you doing that. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, in whatever capacity that is, I'd love to speak to you, get to know you, see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So there's going to be a link in the description down below, or you can go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com, the website, and there'll be a sign-up page there as well. We can hop on the call and have a great conversation. But before that, enjoy today's awesome interview with Byron Lazine. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Byron Lazine. Hey, Byron.
What's up, Barry? Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation, which no doubt will be a good one. But before we do that, do you want to give people an idea about your background, what you've been up to, and what your current focus is?
Yeah. So I tried to get a start in real estate investing, actually, 19 to 21, massively failed. By my mid-20s, I literally lost everything. We can get into that story at the end if you want, or at any time. But I got back into real estate through the sales side. And so my second try at it was much more successful than my first try. First try, I thought I knew everything, thought I had all the answers, and I was really just bad at every aspect of investing and managing rental properties. And I should have started sales from day one. Legitimately, I wish that when I was 18, I wish I went into car dealership sales for like a year or two. This is my wish. Like, if you could do it all over again, get my sales skills in, get my license, and then go right into selling real estate. But when I did end up finally getting my real estate license and going into sales, I realized that I had a knack for that. I was pretty natural at sales, and started building a team from day one. Realized that the solo agent is basically dead. You've got to build a team if you're going to be on the residential sales side. Found out that I've got a little bit of chops in operating, and I love the back end of the business, actually. And so I've been doing that the whole way through, building team. Actually, this year, we just crossed year to date over 100 million in sales. So fast forwarding all the way to today, we're building something pretty special here on the Connecticut shoreline. I'm a licensed broker in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Mass, Florida. But the team that I just referenced is operating here on the Connecticut shoreline.
Wow, yeah, a lot of cool stuff in there for sure. That's interesting. You said that you wish that you would at 18 that you'd gone in as a car salesman and stuff.
I really do. Because I admire what those guys do. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think there could be even today a lot of innovation, and certainly when I was 18, I think I could have innovated, a little bit more uniquely than what you see people doing. Even today, I think those guys could innovate more. Generally, people would wait for the business to come to them or just cold calling, but just those basic level salesmanship skills that you learn on the lot would have paid dividends, because it's real tough for an 18-year-old to go just, be working with people selling their home, right? Selling their biggest financial asset. So if you got a little bit of that sales skill under your belt for, say, a year, 2 years, 2021, then jump into real estate, before I ever would have invested in real estate, I'd be a lot further along than I am right now.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's it. Because I've talked to a few people and they started out doing door-to-door sales, right? Like that's how they started out, and they
Yeah,
say
same thing.
they say it's the best thing that they ever did. Like as terrible as it was at the time, getting people like swearing at you, shouting at you, threatening you, all that stuff, right? But once you learn that skill and once you kind of do that, right, what can be kind of not scarier, but kind of worse than that, right? Knocking on someone's door and not knowing what's on the other side and what kind of reaction you're going to get from that.
Yeah, I mean, door-to-door sales, you're going to learn how to handle objections pretty quickly. You're going to understand that you're going to catch people on all like moments of their day. Some people are going to be super happy, some people are going to be aggravated, and you're going to get some skill to navigate those choppy waters. So, yeah, I think that would be something you'd be able to carry with you throughout your career. And sales, and I said, well, when we used to do like a lot of speaking stuff at like local schools and stuff like that, I would tell high schoolers all the time, sales is the number one skill you can learn by far. I don't care what you're going to college for. If you can learn the skill of sales, it's going to be what pays you the most for your entire, whether even if you're going to be a teacher, right? Like say you want to go into education. Well, what would I need the skill of sales for? You're going to have to sell yourself to compete against 200 other applicants for a position of one, because that's typically what happens for teachers, right? It's a very competitive environment. So you got to figure out like, okay, who do I need to know to push into the top 10 to make sure I get the interview? Who am I going to have to sell to make sure I get into that final five? And then who am I really going to have to sell once I get there to win the position of just teacher, right? So the skill of sales is invaluable in life, no matter what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And unfortunately, for some reason, the actual word sales, right? For so many people, they go, oh,
That's right.
sales. I'm not salesy. Oh, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be a salesman. And I think it's just the word, right? For some reason, that word, like, it gets misconstrued and it just thinks like, oh, like you said, a used car salesman, right? It's just, that's what you've got to try and force people into buying something that they want, or you got to be obnoxious or whatever it is, right? And I'm not saying that's what all car salesmen are, but I think that's the perception. But I think sales is just like you pointed out there with being a teacher, right? Sales is in every aspect of our lives, right? Sales, and you could almost take that word out, sales, and replace it with something else, just so that maybe people would listen and kind of pay attention. Because I think a lot of people switch off when you use that word sales, but you're selling everything, right? Like I want to get my wife to do something for me, right? I've got to sell her on that idea, right? I want to,
Right.
get my coworkers to do something with me, right? I've got to sell them on that idea that I'm doing, right? Like you said, the teacher, even if you go deeper, that teacher has got to sell the idea of teaching those kids, right? Whatever kids are not easy to teach. You've got to sell to those kids, right? And it's that word that gets like, I don't know, it just turns
Right.
people off for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at 2020 as the perfect example. The people that have, there has been for sure winners and losers through the health crisis that we're currently going through. And the people that are on the winning side that have been fortunate enough, you do have some scenarios where like here in the Northeast, you've got some restaurant entrepreneurs that no matter what they do, because of strict lockdowns, they're just not able to operate. But at the end of the day, the people who are on the winning side are selling something, right? And they're navigating and pivoting, and at the end of the day, making sales happen. You have to sell no matter what to stay in business. And with whatever the example is going to be, even if it's not a true sales position, you've got to convince to stay in the game. You've got to like show your value, right? The marketplace needs to see your value to give you something back. And sales is it.
Yeah. And I think just going more specific into what you're saying as well, I don't think a lot of agents, also real estate agents, realize that they're in the sales business, right? They think, hey, just going to show a home, I tell my friends and family, and then someone's going to buy, and then that's it, right? They don't realize how important the sales aspect of real estate is.
So many got into it because they bought their house, thought it was a cool experience. They're into homes. They're into, like, the big thing now is like, I'm into renovation and design, and I want to parlay that into being a real estate agent. Man, you got to work through people's fears and questions, and you've got to be the knowledge agent. You got to be the knowledge broker. as my buddy Tom Ferry would say, you've got to bring the questions that are floating around in their head. You've got to bring the answers to them and help them navigate. And that's selling, right? Educating, being a teacher first, right? We started with the whole education conversation,
Right. Yeah.
right? You got to sell them that you're giving them the right answers, make them feel comfortable, and ultimately educate that process that they're going through.
Yeah. Well, so with new people join, like you said, you've built new teams up early on, and I'm sure you're recruiting all the time. With new agents that come to you guys, I'm sure you have a vetting process. But once they kind of join you, what kind of stuff do you guys teach them about sales? To kind
Yes.
of them, right? Because it's the real estate. I'm sure a lot of people would agree. Is like the real estate is a small part of it, right? It's the big part in the big grand scheme of things, but it's the small part in terms of the success of the business, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. And we prefer brand new agents, quite honestly.
Okay.
Not that we don't take, experienced agents, but you have to unwind a lot of crap. And unless they fit into our number one core value, which is be a little bit better today than you were yesterday, it's going to be real difficult to unwind that. So they've got to really, really epitomize that core value. But we prefer new agents because if you've got less than 20 to 30 closings under your belt, you're going to go into our new agent program, which is required 9 to noon, Monday through Thursday. This isn't your typical real estate shop where we're going to hold your license and you're just going to run around looking for deals on your own. You're going to have to invest and commit to the training Monday through Thursday, 9 to noon, every single week till you hit your 20th closing or 30th closing. You can buy it down from 30 to 20 by paying a certain fee per month if you want to get out of the program a little bit sooner. But you hit it, like the training, the education, the learning every single day. 9 o'clock, they start role playing. So they're role playing how to engage with a client, how to talk to a client, whether that's going to be a Zillow lead, a seller, a buyer, an investor, whatever the case is. We're going to practice before we play. Because if you get out there in game time and you don't know what you're doing, people are going to sniff you right out and go look for another agent very quick, right? They do not want to work with someone who's not experienced. We were chatting before the podcast, right? You've lived in Tampa, now you're living in Vegas. If you were to move back to Florida, would you be interviewing the least experienced people to work with you, the people that don't know the language of real estate and how to talk real estate to you? Or would you be looking for the most experienced, the people that talk the language and articulate it well? And same thing if you were going to get, an operation on your knee, you're not going to go with the part-time, you're going to go with the full-time. So we don't take part-timers. If you're like, well, I kind of want to get into real estate, but I got this job Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then I can commit, Monday, Friday, and the weekend, so I'll be able to show homes. No, this just isn't going to be the place for you. We're only working with full-time real estate professionals so that we can give a level of, quality to the end consumer.
Yeah, I think that's huge there because it's like you said, professional, right? You've got to treat it as if you are a professional, right? I think there's a lot of those agents hanging around like, oh, I've got another job. Real estate is easy. I'll just get my license and I'll make some sales and blah, blah, blah. I don't need to work on it. I'll just, turn up and I'll get the sales. You've got to, like anything, right? Like if you want to be a pro athlete, right? If you want to be successful at that, if you don't train every day, right? You're going to lose out to the people that are, right? Because they're training every day. And then another thing I love there is that you said is that you train every day so that when you go to play, it's easy, right? They always taught us that. Train hard, play easy. Because when that situation comes up in a wrestling match or in a sports game or in the real estate business, right? If you've trained it and you're used to it, right? When that pressure comes on, it comes to you naturally. You don't have to think about it. It just comes, right? When, a seller or a buyer gives you an objection, right? You're there, you're ready with it because you practice it day in, day out. And I think that's huge.
You should try to avoid seeing things for the first time in game action, right? That should hopefully you've seen it before. And real estate's a funny business. You could be in this business 30 plus years and you're not going to see everything. But if you see the basics and the foundations enough before you get into the game, you're going to be able to navigate. You're going to know who to go to for those unique situations that do pop up all the time in this business, whether it's on the investment side, the sales side, the listing side, whatever the case may be. There are some wacky situations and certainly some wacky personalities because we're dealing with everybody. But if you've got those basics down, you'll be able to get through those unique situations a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Out of interest, what are you guys doing? Are you guys doing anything different with your business now, post COVID, as opposed to pre-pandemic? Has it changed much? I'm sure it's nationwide, right? Everyone's busier right now, and I'm sure Connecticut's not the real estate market's just kept hotting up. I'm guessing. I'm no
Yeah.
idea.
I mean, inventory tightened up. We're working with more buyers, but that's just going to where the market is. You know, we were listing heavy, working with more sellers before. Now we're kind of working with more buyers as inventory is tightened up for sure. But that's just you know, any top producer is going to make those shifts to where the deals are happening. We were using Zoom, you know, for years. I feel like before any of this happened, before Zoom kind of took off and everybody started using it. You know, we were very social media savvy. You know, it's not like we, you know, had to switch up our marketing, you know, techniques or anything like that. We've been, you know, pretty much ahead of that curve. Um, you know, certainly to where we're marketing, you know, that kind of changed. We were seeing an influx of New Yorkers this year on the Connecticut shoreline. And so we were marketing, you know, to that wave of activity. And in the summer, it was like, man, all the New Yorkers, they're not in Manhattan. So they were in the Hamptons. So it's like, usually you market to New York City to draw them out to the shoreline. Well, if they weren't already here on the Connecticut shoreline, they were in the Hamptons. So it's like we got to market to the Hamptons because nobody was in New York City at all. So a lot of our digital marketing was pointing towards the Hamptons, you know, at one time. Now, you know, they've kind of flowed out of there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just kind of listening to the market as always, and going to where the opportunities were.
How are you guys finding that out? Like about that there wasn't so much people in New York and that people were more in that. Is it migration patterns? How are you guys tracking all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was really just talking to the brokers in the city, you know, and how many of these buildings that you're going into, how many of them are at capacity? None, right? Like they were all, you know, 20-30% capacity. I mean, the amount of New York plates that were just here, just like boots on the ground here on the Connecticut shoreline, it was incredible this summer. Never seen that many New York plates. We always used to, you know, sellers would always be like, can't you just find me a New York buyer? And it's like, okay, you know, maybe one or two out of, you know, 10 or 20 sales, you get a New York buyer. This summer, it was happening all the time. I'm going to be very interested to see year end migration stats. You know, Connecticut's lost outbound migration. We've been one of the leaders in outbound migration for all the states for a number of years now. I I've seen some early signs and some early stats that we've actually flipped it. We had more inbound than outbound for the first year in a long time, and it's certainly due to the influx of New York folks. So I'll be interested to see that the final 2020 stats, if that, you know, if what we've seen on the ground has held true in the numbers.
Yeah. Out of interest, obviously, this is just an opinion and just two people talking, so it's not a prediction or anything like that. But do you see this kind of migration out of the urban areas to the suburbs continuing? Because obviously that's what's happening there, right? People want to leave the city and they want to be outside in the fresh air, you know, not, you know, touching people all the time, not in, you know, high-rise condos. They want a house or a townhome or something where they, you know, they have some space at least. Do you see that continuing long term, or do you have a feeling that it's more of a shorter term thing? Just in terms of
I think it continues as long as the employers allow it to, and the employers have been, you know, very much letting this work from home thing, you know, not only play its course, but say, hey, there's going to be some long term life to this, which is shocking because a lot of them are in you know, some pretty significant leases. But you know, a lot of them have said, hey, you're not coming back till fall of 21, and if they push that out again, you'll see it continue. There will be a migration back into the city. I always thought this was going to happen when, you know, way down the road, when technology really took off, when we have like flying cars, when we're like full Jetsons mode. I'm like, everybody's going to go back to you know, rural and suburbia, when you can just fly back into the city and that kind of stuff. Or you got the Elon Musk hyperloop, right, going like zipping you into the cities and that kind of thing. I didn't think it was going to happen this quickly. What certainly has changed perspective is quality of life. And I think if people can figure out a way to work from home, even if it's for a little bit less, and get a better quality of life outside the city, they're going to take that opportunity. So I mean, it's changed the way people think. Uh, there's no doubt that, and this is, I'm definitely not going to get political here. I'm just saying there's no doubt that our dollar has been devalued with the amount of money that we're printing. And, real estate's something real that you can utilize, that you can touch, that you can live in, that you can rent, that you can, there's a lot of versatility to having a real asset. And so I think we're going to see a long-term run here on suburban and rural America, where people are going to want to put their dollars that they have somewhere. And the stock market is a tricky thing right now, and you're definitely not going to leave your money in cash and just watch it continue to go down. So yeah, I do believe, whether it's investors starting to buy up some of the properties, or just like we started the conversation with, folks leaving the city and putting their life outside in suburbs and rural America. Yeah, I think there's going to be a pretty significant run here for a couple of years. The interest rate is supposed to stay low for a couple of years, so there's a lot of factors lining up. We're not in a bubble situation like we were during the mortgage crisis when I lost everything. So yeah, I think there'll be a pretty significant run here.
Yeah, I agree, and I think real estate is a good hedge against inflation. If there's inflation, well, the home prices are going to go up with that inflation, right? It's kind of a good hedge against it. So I'm all about real estate, so you're preaching to the choir with me. But going back to you touched on a bit earlier about the social media and the marketing aspect of your business, right? But I think it's been, if not as critical, but more critical now, I think, during this time as well, right? And I think any business, right, be it real estate related or not, if you're not paying attention to your digital marketing, I think you're massively losing out. Out of interest, what are some of the biggest things that you've learned and that you continue to grow in your business in terms of digital marketing, in terms of how you guys use social media and whatnot?
Yeah, the first thing I got right in my business was doing what you're doing, having a weekly show. And I built one team and split off from my old partner and relaunched this other team 3 years ago. But the one thing I stayed true to was, even back then and then now, is having a weekly show. Like right now, our weekly show is up on Inman News every single week. The Real Word, which I do with Nicole here on the team, and my local radio show. Like having a weekly pillar piece of content that I can pick from and write blogs from, and do little clips on Instagram and get all my content from, because I'm busy operating a business. I don't have all day to just sit there and produce content. But that was the one thing I got right, was doing it all on my own. We started building out an actual media company around it. Sam, who's here helping me on my side with the podcast, produces and edits a lot of our content. We've grown that now to four employees, some VAs, and some interns, where we're servicing our internal real estate team, as well as other real estate teams, a builder association here in Connecticut, to be able to expand talent. And yeah, it's been the one thing I've gotten right, is consistent branding, having a pillar show every single week, basically the Gary V model, right? Have that pillar piece and be able to pick all your bite-sized content from that.
Yeah, well, so for people who don't know, tell them a little bit about your show, and where can they find it, and where can they live?
Yeah, and the Real Word is really easy. It's duplicatable. We're doing real estate news, so we're picking articles from Inman or Realtor Mag or Housing Wire, and it's information for real estate agents. But there's a lot of bite-sized pieces that might relate to a homeowner, or might relate to a mortgage guy or an entrepreneur, depending on the topic. And it's called The Real Word, and we have 2 rackets and a marketeer of the week. So 2 rackets are basically 2 news articles, and then we pick a marketeer of the week. And we call them rackets because we say, hey, is this Zillow acquisition, just as an example, a racket or not, right? And we just go through the article and just basically giving our opinion on it. But it keeps it easy because we know we got to pull 2 articles that were in the last 7 days that were trending in real estate news and pick something unique in the marketing world. I mean, today when we shot our show this morning for this week, and we recapped Brad Inman's 2020 predictions, which he put out in December of 2019. We recapped them, and he had about 10 predictions. We went through, and that was our first racket, and just going through which ones did he get right, which ones did he get wrong. And so, just fun stuff like that, keeping it easy on ourselves, stuff that we'd be reading anyways. I mean, people put up a wall when they start thinking about having a show or producing content or putting content out on social media, because they're not making it easy on themselves. We're already going to consume this content. In fact, Inman News or wherever we're pulling it from, they've already given us the clickbait, right? They've already thought of the thumbnail. We're just going to twist the thumbnail and put our 2 cents on top of it and be able to, pontificate on it. But most people can do a question and answer show in their market, no matter what they are, an investor or an agent or whatever, by just going into their inbox and looking at all the questions they've had in 2020, all the questions people asked you in your inbox. Take all those questions, print them out, print out 150 of them. Now you've got 3 questions per show for 50 weeks. Boom, your show is done for 2021, 50 episodes, 1 a week, 3 questions. They're all living in your inbox. I promise you, they're all sitting there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And why make it hard, right, when it's already easy, right? You've got everything you need in front of you, right? And I think, a lot of people do that, right? They make it way harder than it should, right? I think that's why I've been able to do so many episodes, because this is fun and easy to me. I just record and have a conversation with someone. It's just really enjoyable to me. So if I had, every time I had to record, it's like, oh God, I got to do this again, and I've got to figure this out, and I've got to put all this effort in. We never get it done. But
and you're not reinventing the wheel. That's where people they think they got to come up with some overproduction. I mean, the things that actually work. The reason people watch HGTV all the time is because it's the same thing over and over again. It's a couple looking at 3 properties, little drama, and they're picking one, right? And it's just, people can consume that over and over and over again. So why would they change it if it works? They're probably in their, I don't know, but it's probably 30 seasons or something crazy. Who the heck knows? But they're doing it all the time. You see it all the time. I saw it in the gym this morning. So it's working.
Yeah. So you'd recommend any brand new agent start a podcast, or would you suggest that they get some experience first, or does it not matter so much?
Yeah, I'd start a podcast, but I'd keep it real. I wouldn't try to act like, you've accomplished a whole bunch of stuff. Like, if you're at the start of your journey, start there, right? Have a podcast about starting the journey. Put the podcast on audio and on YouTube. Put it out once a week. Or, like I said, I love the Q&A, like just starting a Q&A podcast and asking questions, and maybe you're like, part of your thing is looking up the answer with the audience and learning together. But yeah, I would definitely be producing content. I mean, what I tell our new agents is your number one focus in year one, if it's going to be residential sales, is you got to get double-digit sales. You got to get to 20 plus sales, so that when people look you up, that they respect you. You got to get to 20 plus sales in year one, and you got to get double-digit reviews on Zillow. 3 out of 4 buyers use Zillow. You're not stopping that. So you better be reviewed on Zillow. You better have double-digit sales. And if you can just narrowly focus on those 2 things, you're going to be all right. You're going to have a foundation where enough people are going to believe in you to get some business.
But yeah, and I agree. That's all, and it's so true about Zillow, right? That's not going anywhere. But the double-digit sales, right? That's, a lot of people would say that's tough, right? Is it? You know what I mean? To in your first year, do you have any suggestions how people can get there?
Yeah, I think you can get there probably in 8 months if you swallow your pride and go work for the number 1 team in your market. But most new agents get, a line of crap from some manager at one of the big box brokerages that, oh, we've got support for you. You can do this on your own. You should build a team of it. It takes a very rare individual. It takes a business operator to actually build that, especially from the beginning without any experience. So you should go work for the number 1 team in your market, or number 2 team, or whatever, right? Somebody that can put you in position to get the support, get the training, and get the leads, right? Because without the leads to be able to convert, you're right, it will be tough to get to 20 deals. But if you have the opportunities because you're working with the right company, the right team, companies are outproducing brokers. Like it's not even close. You're going to see, Barry, over the next couple of years, an even further gap with the top producing teams and just the typical brokerages where they're just hanging on to numbers, hoping that they have a collection of enough volume to pay the bills. The teams are running away with this thing, running away with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's a great piece of advice for people starting out, I think, and just gives them that insight of what to go. But let's go back. I saved not the best, I guess the worst to last. I guess is you said you didn't mind talking about it, so I don't mind. Is your investing career, right? Especially early on, right? Can you talk us through what happened there? You mentioned that you started when you were 19.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college. I didn't take high school seriously. Unfortunately, that would, that I say 18, I wish I went to car sales. It's because I didn't take high school seriously at all. Right. So if I took high school seriously, maybe I would have answered that question differently. But I was working at a place that builds submarines for the government here in Connecticut. It's called Electric Boat. General Dynamics owns Electric Boat. They have one customer. It's the U.S. Navy, and they build submarines. And so I got a job there, thankfully. And I was living at my girlfriend's house, who is now my wife. We were together at 17. And so I was living rent-free at her mother's house. And all my money was going into the bank. I was putting a bunch of money into the GD stock, and then the rest of the money was just literally savings all the time. I wasn't spending any money. So when I turned 19, I was interested in two things: stocks and real estate. I was really interested in real estate because I thought that was my pathway to, I was thinking like most 18, 19-year-old kids, like, how do I get rich? Right? That's just how I was thinking, quite honestly. And I bought a 2-family to start, and then I bought a much more expensive in the market in 04, 05, 06. What that market did. And here in Connecticut, it got way out of control during the mortgage crisis. It was at its highest peak ever, like many places, but very unsustainable here in Connecticut. One that truly still kind of recovered this year on some median price points for like 1 month in June of this year. But that it took 13 years to even get back to like sniffing the doorstep of where we were in 2007. I know a lot of markets, across the country during these 13 years did come back sooner, but not here. Anyways, my second purchase was a massive mistake. It also had a rental component. I built an in-law suite out in the downstairs, but it was really a single family home with an in-law apartment, but it was more expensive of a purchase than I should have gone. It was too much at the time. And then the real big mistake was the third house I bought, and I bought all 3 of these within a 2-year period, 19 to 21. The third house was going to be the flip, the good old flip. And literally, as I was finishing up that project is when the world fell apart, when the Lehman collapse happened and mortgage crisis and everything kind of just bottomed out. Now, when I buy real estate, there's only one way I buy real estate now, is it's got to be in the best location. It's got to be in the best location for me, right? This is just how I'm doing it. It's got to be in the best location, and I've got to get some kind of a deal. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. I get some kind of a deal based on where the market is. But the number one rule is location. So all 3 purchases I made back then was at the top or above market because I was impatient and the market was crazy. And they were all 3 in terrible locations. Okay. Based off of, long-term values and growth patterns and what are these locations going to look like over the next 10 years? None of those 3 properties still today have come back to the value that I paid for them. And so I put the other thing, I was way too fancy. Like I fix these things up way too nice. I put a whole bunch of money into them for no reason. I was a bad landlord. I was bad at marketing my units. I was bad at rehabbing them. I was putting way too much money into them. I was just bad at the whole process, and so lost all the cash and just made poor decisions on lifestyle decisions to kind of you know really pour gasoline on this fire that I've created. And so by my mid 20s, I went bankrupt and lost everything. About $250,000 of my own money. I always say to people now, looking back to where I am now, I don't regret it, because that $250,000 could have been, an Ivy League education, but boy, did I get an Ivy League education in real estate, right? Which is my passion. So, but in between getting into real estate sales and the bankruptcy, those were some dark days, living in regret, continuing to look backwards. I left the job at Electric Boat, and my dad got me in during the high unemployment years of, say, 2009, 10, somewhere in there, where we had high unemployment. I was one of 8 people to get this job at a nuclear power plant here in Connecticut, where my dad had worked his whole career. And he's like, Byron, you're gonna hate it. I was like, no, it's more money. I'm gonna be fine. Like, I want the money right now. And I was one of 8 people to get the job out of over 2,000 applicants. So I was lucky to get this job. It was pretty much, if you did overtime, you're pretty much getting 6 figures. But he was right. I absolutely hated it, and it was tearing me apart. All I was doing again was looking backwards and thinking, man, if I would have just waited, if I would have just kept saving my money and waited 2 more years, the market would have crashed. If I didn't buy those 3 houses, because I watched some kids that went to college, that graduated with me, that just went to college in those years, had some money coming out. And you remember 09 and 10, like real estate was they were basically giving it away, right? I don't know when you were in Tampa, Florida, but I mean, down there, they were literally giving real estate away. And certainly the same thing in Connecticut. These guys, I'm thinking of one of the guys I went to high school with who went to college, didn't make those mistakes that I did during those years. He's up to probably 80 or 90 doors right now. He just was buying. And so you live in regret. But eventually you've got to say, you know what? I can't keep feeling sorry for myself. I've got to turn my life around. I need to start moving the momentum in the opposite direction. One of the things that really helped me during those days was I came across, do you know who Eric Thomas is?
No.
Now there's a video where he's talking to these college kids, and he's talking about how if you want to be successful in business or in life, you need to want it as bad as you want to breathe. And he goes on a 14-minute rant. And he's
is it about where he takes the guy out to the ocean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. No, I've heard that. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
It's brilliant, and anybody should watch it. I watched it probably a good 300 times before I finally said, you know what? I don't care that I'm making close to 6 figures. This is a job that I hate. I'm living in regret. I know there's more for me out there. I want to get back into real estate. And I quit that job on a Tuesday at 11. And I said, I'm just leaving right now. They're like, Byron, you're nuts. Go take 2 weeks off paid. Think about this. I didn't have to think anymore. I just left and never came back. I didn't even have my license yet. That's not really the best advice, but I was at that point, I was done, and I knew I had to put my back to the wall one more time, to just go for it and make sure that there was, you got to burn the boats, as they say. And that's what I did. And, thankfully it's worked out for me.
Yeah, what a powerful story, right? And so many people, I'm sure, went through similar things, right? Not the exact same thing, but like after that crash, they lost
lots of people,
right? And I think with where we are now, right? Not everyone's in the. I don't think the crash is as bad. And I don't mean in real estate. I mean in just economically, right? A lot of people are losing their jobs, or they're struggling financially right now, right? But I think what people can take from that is you have 2 choices, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's easy to make one of those 2 choices. Like you can feel sorry for yourself, you can be unhappy, and you can wallow in that self-pity, right? Which, a lot of people have perfect right to do that. But or you can turn it around like, hey, what can I do, right? What is in my control? What options do I have? What do I want to do with my life? Where am I going to go from here, right? And I think, thankfully, you kind of made that second choice, right? Is like taking control of your life. And yeah, you burned the ships. And like you said, you had no plan at the time, like, backup plan. But at the same time, I'm sure that drove you, right? Because you had to, at that point, you had to be successful. You had no choice but to be successful.
That's true. But when you're in it, and when I was in it, it's hard. I mean, it is hard because you just like, you just don't think, even though I'm still incredibly young, and I was incredibly young then, you just don't think you can get going again. You don't think you're going to have the opportunity. You lost all that money. You don't have any credit. You don't have, the opportunity. You're living in negativity in your head. The people around you, like, a job like that where you're going into a nuclear power plant, there's so much negativity in there because everybody, like my father included, everybody that is there for 30 years had dreams of doing something else, and they just happened to be there, and then they had kids, and then they're stuck. So you're just surrounded by negativity every single day, and most of it is up here always because this is the one thing that we can all control, and it's hard. And I know a lot of people in 2020 are up here too much, right? They're overthinking, and they're dwelling, and they're in their own head. And if somebody is listening right now that's in that spot, I would encourage you to work like the old Jim Rohn stuff, ROHN, Jim Rohn. Work on yourself harder than you do on your job. Work on yourself, invest in yourself. I mean, that was what that that Eric Thomas video did for me. It started the path for me to build the right momentum, to build upon myself, to invest in me, to make me a stronger mentally, physically, definitely the mindset person. And that allowed me to go into that direction, because we're not, without that personal growth, without investing in ourselves, none of us are tough enough to get through that kind of adversity.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And I appreciate you sharing all that, man. I'm glad it eventually all worked out, right? And a lot of times as well, these adverse situations, right? They build us into who we are a lot of times, right? At the time, there's been situations in my life where I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible, but it's took me in another path that's led me to where I am today. And I think, it just ultimately worked out. So I think that's cool. Well, out of it, do you invest a little bit? How many, what kind of stuff do you invest in? How many?
Well, I mean, I got a condo this year that was like just a great deal because it was off market. It was right before everything picked up. So that's just a single. I mean, not to the level that I want to someday. No, I want to be investing, in rental real estate for sure. But I've put all over the last 7-8 years, I've been putting all my cash for the most part, stock investment and that kind of thing. But the majority of it into the two companies, the real estate company and the media company, to be able to build machines that can spit off cash down the road. Right. So I'm a long-term thinker. That's one thing that whole experience taught me, is there's no get rich quick type of thing. Right. I mean, that's what I thought was going to happen back then. It's like I bought 3 houses in 2 years. I thought the market was going to keep going up. I'm going to refi. I'm going to do that. I had all these ideas in my head of how I was going to get rich. It doesn't happen that way. It's long-term planning. I want to build something that's indestructible. I'm not building companies to sell them. I'm building them to be annuities year over year for the rest of my life, so I can keep pulling cash and making investments. And even though the market is where it's at, I'll be looking for investments in 2021. I'm at that point where, yeah, it's going to make sense to get some, as the real estate company keeps growing, it's going to make sense to hopefully get some, storefront real estate that maybe is vacant now, but has a couple apartments upstairs. We have these small little shoreline towns in Connecticut. Like, those are the kind of deals I'm really interested in right now, where I can, put an office in downstairs to pay ourselves the rent, but we've got the apartments insulating that investment upstairs. Those are the types of deals I have my eyeballs on. But long term, would I like to own, big, you know 30 plus door properties? For sure. I think all of us would. And I think I'll get there where I'm either investing in with others or on my own. I'm certainly continuing to learn from people that are in that position. Just a couple weeks ago, a guy locally here who he's an owner of like 5,000 plus doors with all of his investments, and he's done really well, and with a couple of other guys. And as often as I can, picking his brain or other investors that I know, like, how'd you do this, how do you look at a deal, how do you can you share your pro forma sheet with me, like all that kind of stuff. You've got to, just like with the agents, right, the new agents, you've got to practice before you go in there and play. And I got burnt badly when I went out there and just tried to get into the game, but before having any practice. So I'm still educating myself heavily.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that as well. All the experience that you have and the success you have, you're still like hungry to learn, right? And I find that it's like a common trait amongst successful people, right? It's never ending, that learning process, right? You never get there, right? It's a never ending goal to learn more and to learn more and to learn more. Yep. Then when you learn more, you realize how much more you've got to learn, right?
So true. I mean, look at a guy like Warren Buffett. He still reads all the time today. Mark Cuban still reading all the time, still trying to get an edge, still trying to get better. Our core value, just with our real estate team here, number one core value is be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. How can you get better? How can you get a little bit more of an edge today? If you're not growing, you're dying. All those cliche things, they really are true.
Yeah, for sure. Man, this has been a fun interview. It's been really interesting. But as we talked about before, you have a bit of a wrestling background to some extent,
yes,
right, in terms of watching and kind of being at the event. So this part should be easy for you. This is the part where I ask wrestling related real estate questions. Going the wrong way around there. And the first, even though the first one isn't that, it would be, what would your wrestling name be if you chose one for yourself?
Yeah, I know you mentioned that at the beginning of the show, and I'm like trying to think, like, what would my name be? What I will say is my I was a big fan of Bret the Hitman Hart, so it'd probably be like Byron the Hitman something, So the Hitman, when I was into wrestling, that's what this guy that used to put on these events and pay-per-views, and we'd go to the events with him, a good community guy. He used to put on basketball tournaments and all this stuff. He would always call me the Hitman. I kind of always liked that. So stealing from Bret the Hitman Hart, I'll go with the Hitman.
The Hitman, yeah, I like that. Actually, while we're talking about, tell you told me before, but share with people the story of how you got. He was third row back at a WrestleMania when Mike Tyson was there.
Mike Tyson was a special guest referee of the main event, but yeah, I hit a half court shot. It was probably so this guy used to put on basketball tournaments, and at one of the basketball tournaments, there was a chance to get basically a couple of front court shots by first two people that hit the half court shot. And there was about 20 other tickets, but they were up in probably the upper deck or whatever. So I got one of the two third row back, but basically where you get to keep the WrestleMania chair by hitting a half court shot. So that was pretty cool. And I did let a couple people come down for a couple matches, and I went and sat up in the stand, kind of rotated around. But for those main event matches, I was down in that seat for sure.
That's a really cool story. Not only were you there, but the way that you got there is really, really awesome as well. Every wrestler has a special move, right? It's their biggest strength. What is your special move in real estate, you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because I'm such a big wrestling fan, and obviously WWE's headquarters. I don't know if they moved down to Florida or if they're still headquartered here in Stanford. They're still headquartered here in
still there. Yeah, they have a
training
facility in Florida. That's where they have.
Yeah,
train all the new talent.
So wrestling's always been huge here in the Northeast, but my biggest strength, finishing move would probably be brand. That was the one thing that, again, going back to the pillar content thing that I got right, was building a brand on social media, while everybody else, all the veterans here on the Connecticut shoreline, when I got in, they were still hammering newspaper. They were still doing really bad photography. Like my brand was built on locally here on Facebook, doing a lot of community stuff, doing a lot of shows, just putting out content all the time. And then also part of my brand was getting a lot of listings. So having the inventory, but doing everything 100% of the listings before anybody was doing it around here with professional photos. Now everybody's obviously doing that. Everybody's caught up, but just trying to stay around those corners on the marketing side. So having an eyeball for marketing is probably my biggest strength.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a very important strength to have, no doubt. And what's been the biggest body slam you've taken? Maybe outside of the bankruptcy. I don't know if you've had any.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that, but that in general, but in real estate sales, I'll give you one, that I talked about being, there's a video on, I think on my YouTube where I say my biggest mistake in real estate. And, so I had this farm listed, beautiful farm. I had it listed for a few years, like on and off. Seller was kind of a little bit of a difficult seller. I had this listing again on and off, and I liked working with him. Him and his wife, great people. Really enjoyed them. But he was a type A personality, knew what he wanted. And the last time we had it listed, I had I had somebody interested, and we were at a certain list price. Let's just call it 1.5 million. And I brought him basically within 98.5% of asking price, and he had been on for a couple of years before I got the listen. I had it for 3 years, so you're talking about 5-year opportunity. And he wanted his number. He only wanted his number. And he was really really being aggressive, and kind of had an aggressive phone call, and he's like, you know what, why don't you just let me out of the listing? And um at that point, when I knew he wasn't taking the other deal, which was basically 1% within asking price, I was like, you know what, it was early morning. I probably missed the gym. I probably missed my morning routine. I'm a big gym morning routine guy, and I just wasn't thinking clearly. And I let my emotions get the best of me. And I said to him, I said, sure, yeah, I'll let you out of listen. I'll send you the cancellation right now. Like, it was kind of just like, you know what, I'm done with it. Stupid move. You ever hear Ryan Serhant talk from New York City, of course, number one team in America for a couple of years there with their volume. He says your number one job when you take a listing is to never get fired. Well, I fired myself off of the listing basically by sending him the cancellation, because I had him on an exclusive. And so he signed the cancellation. A day later, an agent in that market, he gives her the listing. And one day later, a very prominent brewery from just over the border in Massachusetts buys the property for full price, cash. The new agent who'd been on the job a day gets both sides of the deal. Would have been me. And it was big because there was a lot of publicity around this brewery buying it. It was a really good moment in time for to grab some notoriety, for whoever the listing agent is, which wasn't me anymore, right? Even though I had it for 3 years. Put in all the work, really kind of with the buyer that I brought to the table, kind of set that whole thing up. And if I would have just not had a bad attitude and just hung in there and not let the emotions get to me of having, a million things on my plate and having, an angry seller and whatnot, and just didn't fire myself. I mean, I would have had my name on the listing. I would have had my name on a whole bunch of, PR and write-ups that were happening. I would have created another great relationship. And, I dropped the ball. And that was probably, I've made other big mistakes, but probably my biggest mistake in real estate yet.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to, before I got into sales, and I was just living in regret, and thinking I want to get into real estate. You ever want to do something and you just like spend 3, 4, 5, 6 years of your life like, I'm gonna do that someday, I'm gonna do it someday, but you just never took action. And, that was me working at that nuclear power plant, like just telling myself I'm gonna do this, looking backwards, not taking the action. And again, for me, it was the personal development till I dove in head first, realized I didn't know everything. I had a lot to learn, started watching a whole bunch of content to get my mind in the right place, started reading, started educating myself, that I was able to finally take that leap. And when I have agents now that have a full-time job that they hate, but they don't want to commit all the way, I send them this video about taking a leap, taking a jump, taking a leap of faith. And sometimes that's all you need. You need that little bit of a push, that nudge, to get going. And momentum's a funny thing. Once you get the ball rolling in the right direction, man, it can really take off. It can take off a lot quicker than you think. You always think it's just never going to happen. It's not going to be soon enough. It'll take too long. Once you get it rolling, it compounds, right? Getting a little bit better every single day compounds over time. You look back in 2 years and you're like, whoa, I've done quite a bit in the last 750 days.
Yeah. Momentum's very real, right? Like you said, once it gets going, it's really a powerful thing. Well, man, Byron, this has been awesome, man. This has been a really fun talk, man. We've just been covered so much interesting stuff, man. It's just been fascinating to hear everything that's going on with you. But for people who want to know more and want to find out more, whatever, they're looking for an agent in Connecticut, they're maybe an agent looking to join your team, or just to find out more in general about what you've got going on, how can they do that?
Well, if you're in Connecticut looking to get into real estate, definitely go to realestateagentscholarship.com. We're pushing that pretty heavy right now. We're giving away 12 scholarships where we pay for you for your real estate school here in Connecticut. So that's a good opportunity if you do want to get into the game here locally. But yeah, if you want to connect with me anywhere online at Byron Lazine, just use my name, hit me up on Instagram. You can DM me there. And I think that's how we connected, was Instagram, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So that's a great place to find me, and, or YouTube or definitely audio podcast, The Real Word. So, but, find me on Instagram at Byron Lazine. I'll have all my links there, and you can go check out some good stuff.
Awesome. I'll include all of that in the description and the show notes below so people can find it easily. Byron, man, this has been awesome. It's been a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. It was a really great conversation. This is why I love this stuff, having great conversations just like that one. So I really appreciate it, man.
No, thanks for having me on. I definitely want to jam with you some more and get to learn more about you. So we're gonna have to do a little trade-off. Come on,
a little switch. Yeah.
Come on my podcast so I can dig into your mindset a little bit.
Sounds good. I would love to, man.